Hello and welcome to News9 Live. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has slammed reports appearing in Western media about violence against minorities in India, especially the Muslims. In a strong rebuttal to the negative Western perception of India, Nirmala Sitharaman claimed that Muslims in India are doing much better than those in neighboring Pakistan, adding that those commenting on such issues should come and see the reality on the ground. Speaking in the United States, the Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman said that India has the second largest Muslim population in the world, and that population is only growing in numbers. Let's listen in to what she said.
Descriptions are ours. I would want to ask if that's not to say or not to even imply that I accept the perception that you're referring to. India has the second largest Muslim population in the world. And that population is only growing in numbers. If there is a perception or if there's in reality, their lives are difficult or made difficult with the support of the state, which is what is implied in most of these write-ups. I would ask, will this happen in India in the sense, will the Muslim population be growing than what it was in 1947? As opposed to, let us say, I take the name of the country and therefore the contrast can be sharper, as opposed to Pakistan, which was formed at the same time. India was divided into two, Pakistan. Pakistan declared itself an Islamic country, but however is said, minorities will be protected. Every minority has been dwindling in its number, or if I may use the word which is harsher, decimated in Pakistan. Even some of the Muslim sects have also been decimated. Violence prevails against Muhajirs, Shia, and every other group you can name, which is not accepted by the mainstream, I don't know, Sunnis probably. Whereas in India, you would find every strand of Muslim doing their business, their children getting educated, fellowships are being given by the government. And I would want to see where exactly is that one state where. And again, law and order is a very state subject. It's not the government of India's subject. Each province has its elected government. They take care of the law and order in those states. So across the board in India, if violence is happening to make Muslims get affected, itself is a fallacy as a statement. It cannot be so. Each province and its police are different. They are run by the elected governments in those provinces. So that itself tells you how these reports have no clue of the law and order systems in India. To say it's all the blame of government of India, I would want to say, then tell me, between 2014 and today, has the population dwindled? Has the deaths been disproportionately high in any one particular community? So I would rather invite these people who write these reports to come to India. I'll host them. I'll host them. Let them come and let them travel alone India and prove their point.
And joining me to speak about this strong rebuttal from Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman is Kartikeya Sharma, Executive Editor, my colleague from News9, and political analyst Desh Ratan Nigam. A very warm welcome to both of you. Kartikeya, I'm going to come to you first. Kartikeya, I think it is only prudent of her, considering that she travelled abroad and particularly as a representative of the Indian government, to defend the country and to perhaps explode certain myths. Would you agree, Kartikeya?
Definitely. You see, there is, I would say that there's a concerted part on the on Western media, but I think there is a long-held bias. I'll give you an example. When Prime Minister on Sunday released data on tiger, and he launched the association of 7 feline, Al Jazeera did a story Sudha, that tiger conservation has taken place, but at the cost of the Adivasis. The forest minister, the environment minister had to respond to it. Now, there are a number of cases, for example, you would know that law and order in India is part of the federal structure. It's part of the state. So any law and order issue related to the oppressed castes becomes in the BJP rule states. But any issue related to Adivasi or the Dalits is reported as an individual case. So I think it's because of the fact that because BJP has a, I would say, a strong image problem when it comes to the Western press. For example, if you read New Yorker, New York Times, and even Guardian, the coverage of Rahul Gandhi's disqualification, which can be actually criticized on multiple grounds. Everyone has criticized the way judgment came out. A lot of legal luminaries said that it was in bad taste. But abroad, Sudha, it was being South China Morning Post, Guardian, NYT, New Yorker. The democracy is in danger. So I think there is a bias. And I think India needs to send its own narrative. It is not that we shouldn't scrutinize our government. We shouldn't scrutinize our finance minister. We shouldn't scrutinize our home minister. We must scrutinize them. But I think when you tend to extrapolate other things to one issue, I think that's where the problem is. I think Nirmala Sitharaman was right when she used that example in context of minorities. I'm not saying that there are no issues. BJP has not given a single ticket to minority in Uttar Pradesh. They don't have a single member in Lok Sabha, but they have nominated minorities in Uttar Pradesh through legislative council, which many people wouldn't know in international press. There are 4 members who have been nominated. So I'm saying the picture is far more complex. It's far more gray. It's not black and white.
Right. Let me get Deshratan Nigam in. Deshratan Nigam, what my colleague Karthikeya just said, it's about perception, and perhaps a lot of cosmetic surgery needs to be done by the Western press. I'm going to throw certain phrases at you, and I think it's time the Western press, looks inwards and corrects it. Sign of the Gandhi family, so you're superstar of Bollywood. And when it comes to the BJP also, it uses certain phrases and also creates certain perception, which is completely, sometimes totally gone awry. So do you think that it is, they are trapped in their own image of the way they look, not only India, Mr. Deshratan Nigam, but also the entire subcontinent through a common prism, which is very, very faulty?
Sudhaji, in fact, the world is changing.
Yes.
And the status quo of the world is changing. Earlier, the world was divided into 2 superpowers. Today, it is multipolar world with India, China, USSR, Russia, Germany, France, each, strong in their own right. Now, when India is changing the status quo with IMF, World and United Nations, considering India to be the only shining hope during these difficult times, the certain vested interests do get worried. And there is obviously a leftist liberal cabal in the world, which is continents. And therefore, they do suffer from this, that India has to be looked down upon, as they were always doing so. But India has asserted itself through the present leadership of the BJP, including Mr. Modi, and also the contribution of Indian diaspora, which is asserting itself at various levels, and they are occupying the head of these positions of the head of the state. Now, this attitude that the West has is also suffers from, as Mr. Karthikeyan said about the bias, but there is an element of racism also. Please recall how Rishi Sunak in the first attempt could not become the Prime Minister because there were reports that the British people still are not ready for a brown Prime Minister. So the bias that you have in their mindset is slowly crumbling down, but still not gotten away. And the racism amongst towards the blacks in US, you don't need to tell about how the police sometimes behaves out there. In India, internationally a perception is being created that Muslims are at the receiving end, whereas at least 35 to 40% of the beneficiaries of all the government schemes are Muslims. If you recall, Ayushman Bharat, which is a health card for India, started from a Muslim-dominated district of Mewar. And that perception will not go. In fact, it is sometimes, it is the other way around, the riots that have happened, if you recall, NTCA riots in Delhi. how well they were planned and executed, or the pro-hijab riots in Kanpur when the Prime Minister Modi, the President, Governor, and CM were in the same city, and how it was done. So there are enemies within also in conspiracy with this international group of people, including some of the so-called famous New York Times or Washington Post whatever you may call it. There are others as well, and therefore India today is not the very same old India. So it cannot be cowed down, and it does reply in its own way.
But it's very worrisome, Deshratan Nigam, and I'm taking this question to Kartikeya. There is obviously a difference between perception and reality, and we journalists are taught that lesson first, Kartikeya, that this is perception, get real, get facts, crunch numbers, and do the story. Now, I'm talking about the entire Western press. The point is, you can't be calling India a rising economy, a shining economy, a world leader on the one hand, where investments are coming every day, and on the other hand, also run it down. What Nirmala Sitharaman said, she said, please come and visit. And you will see that, investments are coming here, not because you like me and I like you, but the fact of the matter is that we are doing very well. Thank you very much.
You see, I'm not saying this in defense of Bharatiya Janata Party, Sudha, but if you recall in 1980s when Rajiv Gandhi was Prime Minister, riots took place in Bhagalpur, riot took place in Meerut, riots took place in Mariana. There were riots in Meenakshipuram. Those were caste riots. Atal Bihari Vajpayee went to the village. He toured it for 3 days. And that's how the whole issue became national in nature when the conversions took place. So no one said that the democracy is in danger or the ethnicities are in danger. I think no one talks about the way the Shias or Alawites or the Ahmadiyas are treated in Pakistan, or the sort of violence which is being perpetrated by a number of by majority Sunni community in the West Asian axis, then democracy doesn't become an issue. I think I think Western press suffers from its own politicization. For example, a few days ago, I was going through a 20-year-old copy of New York Times in which it said the Bush is elated. And you would recall, Sudha, there was a very famous video of Saddam Hussein's statue being pulled down. It was like providing the American public to a grand finale of the invasion of Iraq. But then I also recall Colin Powell in his autobiography in subsequent interviews said that he does not know why Iraq was invaded. The Western press supported it. So I'm saying that whatever is written by a Western press is not truth. It's part of the strategic agenda of their respective governments, especially the American government. Or for example, I'll give you another example. The reason why I'm saying this is, in name of democracy, they broke Algeria. In name of human rights, they broke Libya. In name of democracy, they broke Syria. And what did it lead to? It led to immigration crisis in entire Europe. America is unaffected, but you have an immigrant issue in Europe because the population which is there is not socially and culturally acclimatized to the Western liberal values. So, the interventions in the name of human rights and democracies have created big problems. Or I do not support dictatorial regimes, but even color revolutions of Eastern Europe had a political agenda.
Absolutely. Yes. And Deshratan Nigamji, it is not as if someone is holding a brief against America or, or for somebody. But today, what really stood out for me, at least, I'm going to stick my neck out and say, she evoked the book, Deshratan. She's evoked the book, which is so precious to you, me, and crores of Indians, and that being the Constitution, the Samvidhan, as it were, that everybody at the end of the day, whatever your color, creed, race, religion may be, is equal under the book. And that is what she was trying to prove, which doesn't seem to be happening in our neighboring Pakistan. Would you concede?
Certainly, Indian Constitution is a dynamic and a living document. Yes, Constituent Assembly gave it about in 1950. But we Indians, we the people, give it to us every day.
Right.
And take pledge towards it. And yes, we have great respect for the Constituent Assembly, but they are no more there today. And therefore, it is today's citizens of this country who are upholding this constitution and giving it to us every day, to ourselves. And therefore, this invocation of the constitution, the sacred book that we have in India, yes, we have challenges. There is no doubts about it. But the constitution has been upheld by every government, except probably a very brief period during the emergency. And yes, there are politicians who go to London and demean Indian democracy. And the attack on Indian democracy by Western press is aided and abetted by Indian politicians, no doubt about it. Western press is not factual at all. It is basically opinionated. And that highly opinionated Western press is now being exposed day in and day out. And today, in fact, if you look at the other side of the picture, the attacks happen on Ram Navami, the Hanuman Janmotsav, or the Saraswati Puja or Durga Puja. Yes, we have challenges, but we are capable of meeting those challenges. We have a law and order situation which is quite good, except minor issues here and there. The courts are there to uphold constitutional values of rights and duties and responsibilities.
Right.
Yes, I think a befitting reply was given by our finance minister on a foreign soil, where with their sense of superiority, certain questions are thrown as if they are the gospel of truth. No, not anymore. Yes. United Nations, India is getting highest number of votes for the various positions it contested in the United Nations. Yeah. It's always more than 100, and it's easily getting elected and selected on those forums. So it's a newfound reputation of India and the image that we are looking at. It's empowerment. Today's India is not like Western powers who have muscular diplomacy. We have a soft approach as a friend, philosopher, and a guide. That is what Vishwaguru means. We are a friend, philosopher, and guide to the world. Not that muscular philosophy of a Cold War that Western powers believed in.
Right. You said something which is very, very pertinent here, that the world has changed and India is also changing, and no more can you bully us or press gang us, into believing something which could be completely false or rather faulty. Kartikeya, but it's also time after that very, very robust rebuttal by Nirmala Sitharaman. I think it's also time, we just can't keep blaming the outside forces. If we look inwards, I think, a lie which is repeated, let's say 5-6 times, actually then almost sounds like the truth. So we have to also look at, the vested interests within us. And I don't mean just India, but even the subcontinent, which goes hammer and tongs on what I today call as very tiresome and cliched image of, the Muslims are being persecuted in this country. I think somewhere that also has to be corrected, Kartikeya.
No, you are right, Sudha. Criticism is welcome when it is honest. Criticism is welcome when it addresses the issue of truth. But I think here it is not a matter of criticism, it is a matter of narrative. You see, the problem, I think, subcontinentally, which we faced in 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s was that India did not have its own narrative. For example, in number of trips I've covered with the Prime Minister, the newspapers would cover us. We would cover our Prime Minister. They would just give it a small space to us. But they would cover dependent regimes like Pakistan. They would cover dependent regimes like Afghanistan, because Indian agenda has been independent. For example, Jawaharlal Nehru, the first thing, people would talk about this non-alignment, but his very vociferous writings on Pakistan joining the Baghdad Pact in CENTO was, please don't bring Cold War to this nation. What it means is that he was talking about non-alignment. Prime Minister Modi is talking about strategic autonomy. He's taking it to a new level. Like Narasimha Rao said, look east. Modi said, act east. So, these are different variations of our policies which our prime ministers have taken up. Bigger problem is we suffer from the narrative casualty. We must build an India narrative. I know Mr. Jaishankar is doing that. We have a lot of think tanks today which were not available to our intellectuals and our journalists in 1980s and 90s. At least we say our own story. I think the Western press is in a sort of a time bomb. They think that we can't tell our story. No, we can tell our story. We can also call off your lie. For example, it was unimaginable for me to see that when our establishment was attacked by Khalistanis, and the London police did not provide security. But once the message went, the security was provided. So that was the power of the India narrative. So to be on the defensive all the time that, the minorities are being persecuted, okay, well, you have done well on Tigers, but what have you done on Adivasis?
Right.
What is happening to the missionaries in Northeast? I think India has moved far ahead. India is a confident country. Yes, we have a lot of miles to cover. It's not as if we have done away with poverty. It's not as if we have done away with equity. It's not as if, the wealth is distributed evenly. We have our problems, but we will take care of our problems. We will decide what is good and bad for India. My problem with such narratives is that it makes us defensive. I mean to say that 1,000 things to write on Myanmar, where people have been killed and there's an exodus. There are 1,000 of things to write on Balochistan. There are 5,000 things to be written on Afghanistan. So India is a fledgling democracy. And lastly, I would like to say the beauty of India, with the only exception of 1975 and 77, when Indira Ji declared emergency in this country, India is the perhaps rarest of the post-colonial nations, Sudha, which have been able to transfer power peacefully from 1952, from one election to another election, from one party to another party. It does not mean that we don't have our problems, but peaceful transfer of power, something which America is dealing with. What happened in Capitol in 2021? The MAGA crowd resisted peaceful transfer of power. We have been able to do it. That is our beauty. The French street were put on fire because of pension reforms.
Yes.
We dealt with farm reforms in a different way. Yes, there was a standoff between the government and the farmers, but there was no large-scale violence, barring one day. It's not, if you compare it with France and things which happened for 21 days, there is a difference. The reason why I'm giving you all the international examples is the people must understand that if India is a robust power, we are doing better in context of other international developments, and we must be proud of it.
Absolutely, Karthikeya. And I think you said a lot of things which a lot of people are thinking today. I've completely run out of time, or else I would have taken a question from Desh Ratanji. Apologize for that. But thank you very much for a riveting conversation there. Thanks to both of you. That's all we have time for, but news and analysis will continue. You're watching News 9 Live.